Here in America, as we've hinted at a couple of times, there's a court case that we're very concerned with in Right to Believe, and that is a court case in Washington, D.C., in the Superior Court that's gone on for 9 years. And it's a dispute. There was a schism within the Unification Church movement. Since that schism began, the founder, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, has passed away. But the court case continues for 9 years now. And in that court case, the faith of a minority, which is the believers under Dr. Yunjin Preston Moon, are being positioned as somehow not true to their faith. The judges are trying to say there what their faith is and whether or not they're practicing it, and on like that. It's very, very disturbing, knowing the First Amendment clearly states that no court should become involved in a religious question, a religious dispute. And this schism is clearly that. And yet we're fighting now to win the victory in that court case. And we're very concerned because we feel that's a precedent-setting case. Dr. Murray, first with you and then to the Imam. Could you explain why you decided personally to support the Right to Believe in this campaign, to have the UCI court case dropped because it is a question of faith, and why you see it as a religious question in its nature? We're on mute right now.
Sorry, anyone that follows the case is following the case would see the evidentiary record that is brought forth, and in it articulates some very critical pieces that speak to the principles and the theocracy within the Unification Church. And what the court is doing in this particular case is stepping in and defining or redefining the basic standard that is being promoted as the mission of that particular church. So although I'm not a member of that faith community, I look at my Christian faith community and it throws my hands up an alarm, because if they can step into your church community and do that, then that opens the door for them to step over into our church community, our faith community, and do the same thing. So when you look at the changes in the way that the judge is pointing to particular components of the question, the schism that's going on, and deciding herself how it's going to turn out, when really in a theocracy, it's defined within that community, and the Constitution states clearly that any kind of religious dispute must be handled within that religious entity. No court can intervene on that behalf, because that court cannot define, redefine, or even assess the meaning. And that's exactly what the court in DC is doing. It is saying your mission is this, the way you're structuring things needs to be this way. And when you're saying, no, that's not what we said, this is what's written here, and they're saying, well, this is how we're going to define it for you. No court has the right to do that. And so therefore, I've said, this is ridiculous. They can't do that. And we've got to give voice to this and say, stop. Because what you're doing is violating a religious freedom. You're violating our First Amendment right for every member of the Unification Church that has agreed with the changes. No court can come in and say, you can make, we have a right to step into that. No, not at all. It must be settled within that church structure.
Thank you very much. I think you've hit right at the heart of the matter. And Imam, this case is drawing a great deal of attention internationally. When the Judge Cordero, came up for reappointment, the judge who made a summary judgment unfairly and unjustly, and I have to say unconstitutionally in this case, she came up for reappointment. From around the world, over 5,000 emails came into that commission to tell them she has made very egregious mistake, legally and otherwise in this case. And please do not reappoint her. This concern is growing because we know the judiciary system works so much on precedent, on what's established, and then that's used to refer back to in many, many cases. So in effect, as Dr. Murray was implicating, once the door is open by a judgment in this way, then what's to stop the court from stepping into any religious question, whether that's a church or whether that's a mosque or whether that is even a religiously oriented nonprofit, for example, which is what this is in the case, is a nonprofit. That's a wide variety of people who are now under threat from the court. Imam, I'd like to hear your thoughts about this, and especially about the danger of setting a precedent like this, endangering religious freedom.
Yeah, you know what, I've heard this case, and what immediately came to my mind, I don't know if people are aware, in the history of America, there was an attempt to do this similar type of thing. This was my frame of reference. I thought about Muhammad Ali. And because Muhammad Ali, of course, he did not want to go, because of his faith, to join the military.
Yes.
And then of course, they initiated, we know he had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court, because the lower courts have basically determined that he was just trying to evade that the Nation of Islam, which that wasn't really a religion. You know what I mean? They were trying to interpret for him.
That's right. In effect, judge his faith or judge his religion.
Yeah. So they denied it, and they had to go to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court, in going back to those founding documents, those principles, freedom of religion, expression, and freedom of conscience. I mean, how can a person come into their created purpose and potential if they can't follow their own conscience? And of course, conscience subjective is something that's legal and acceptable, which eventually we know that they came to a unanimous vote that he was following, that was his faith. They couldn't interpret it, they couldn't change it for him. He was following that, he was following that's what he really believed.
Yes. And
they overruled the lower courts and set him free to do what he needed to do. So I thought about that, his life and his case, when I heard about this case. And of course, if that had been, if the Supreme Court had not overruled the lower courts, then of course, like you're saying, the precedents was very dangerous.
That's right.
We come to the tide that our founders said that the government didn't make and should not break. That tie between man and how they see that. You can't interfere with that.
Yes.
And that's what those are my thoughts on basically what I see in this.
Well, thank you very much for that crystal clear example in American history, where the courts were overruled by the Supreme Court going to our founding documents and saying, no, you cannot say this man is not following his own conscience. He's saying he's following his conscience, and you cannot say he's not, because this is, in essence, a religious question which you have nothing to do with.
Yes.
And that was an important case for many of us, and we feel the same thing for this case. That's why we're fighting hard about it, because we know the nature of the court system, and we can see around the country, as already both of you have referenced, there are a lot of different cases where people's right to believe is being threatened by courts, and they're being in some cases forced to do things they don't want to do, or they're being punished for continuing to do what their conscience and their religious faith is guiding them to do. And this, we know, is unconstitutional. If you enjoyed this discussion, please click the like button and the subscribe button. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on religious freedom.